what I want to do in a short 40 minutes, 45 minutes time period is to give you some ideas that you can take away. So while you're driving back home, these are the 2-3 things that you can think about. How do I future-proof my organization from a learning perspective, skills perspective, people perspective, and help my CEO and my business leader in this digital transformation? So we will give you some ideas, some things that you can think about, some insights, some data points. We all love data points. So I will give you all of that, but more importantly, towards the end of my session, I will try to give you a framework, because I know a lot of questions have been posed, a lot of challenging thoughts have emerged from the previous panel as well. Building curiosity, for example. Building curiosity, that's a nice distraction, but let me just stay on the topic. Things like, somebody asked that how do you develop this continuous learning and critical thinking as skill sets in your people? Okay, so hopefully we'll get answers to some of those, but more importantly, my objective will be to continue giving you insights as to what is available today. What can you do differently on Monday as you go back to your organizations? So I need a clicker. Or somebody will have to change the slides otherwise. Just bear with me for a moment, but let me then already introduce myself. I need to bring up my deck, which hopefully should be coming up in a moment. So we have been talking a lot about digital. So without the deck, let me at least start off. People have different concept of what digital transformation is. Okay. Do anybody in this room have a definition for digital transformation? No? Okay, let me give you a simple one. A simple one that you can take back to your organization and answer it in one sentence. Will that suffice? Okay, let's say a simple sentence for digital transformation is accelerating innovation in our organization. Okay, if you can't remember anything and you remember this, this will do. It's all about accelerating innovation. Why am I saying this and why am I starting with this? Because I am new to this field, but I came back to India after 8-10 years, so I'm in the process of learning curve myself. I'm learning, and one of the ways I'm learning is by talking to our employees and teams, but more importantly to customers and partners, to understand what are the problems that we're trying to solve. One of the things I've noticed is that this misplaced belief around digital. And why I say misplaced, yesterday I was in a different forum, I think you were there, and some of them were talking about we are digital because we have our payrolls in mobile nowadays. I'm like, sure, that is a good thing. Being pay slips available in mobile is a great thing, but it doesn't help anything, or it doesn't have anything to do with accelerating innovation. The fact that you are online is good, but doesn't help in accelerating innovation. So this is not being digital. If you think that being online is digital, I regret to say that is not the case. And you better rethink what digital means in your organization. But if you're absent of any definition, go with the one that I'm giving you. That will work very well. I'm still waiting for the clicker to come in and get me the deck. Raj, can you just fix if you can? Do I have to do something here? Like move my hand? I'm not sure. But let me continue again. On the digital side, there are a couple of key enablers today. So at a highlight level, what are the technologies? The technologies are too many of them, actually. You have got AI, you've got bots, you've got robotics, you've got nanotechnologies, you've got IoT, you've got um, DevOps, you got, there's not, I can keep rattling social, mobile, think mobile first, deep learning, predictive analytics. Without the slide deck, at least these are the ones I remember top of the mind. But there are obviously much more than this. The point is that by the time I even rattle off, there is something new coming up. For example, yesterday I was reading an article which talked about blitzscale. It's a book by Bill Gates. I think it's just released yesterday. And interestingly, what it talks about is this concept of how to build agility in the organization. Great, thanks. All right, finally I got the slides back. So these are the changes that you see continuously. These new technologies are creating obviously new customer experience and disrupting business models. Now, obviously at a personal level, you all have experienced how you order food, how you drink, how you commute, how you consume media, how you buy things. Everything has changed. In India, it's online. This is not something we have been talking about, we know ourselves. No big deal there. But what is really the disruption then? The disruption is the fact that none of these companies existed 10 years back. But that's also not the disruption. The real disruption is when you can't predict your competitor will come from which industry. That's the real disruption. So for example, I asked an airline company, who do you think is your biggest competitor? And the answer was, what do you expect the answer to be? Another airline company, right? Or train. It was Cisco and Microsoft. They take away the reason why you need to travel for meetings and official work, because you can collaborate virtually. I was asking a bank, one of the biggest banks in India, who is your competitor? It was basically one of the e-commerce companies. They consider as competitor. A telecom company is becoming a bank. So the digital disruption is not only about ease of doing things and stuff like that. I would argue the biggest challenge of digital is not knowing who your competitor is or where will the next competitor come from. But more importantly, digital transformation is also about being agile to be able to respond to such competitors. And which is why I said, if you can translate your ideas into production as an organization and as a business by accelerating the innovation that is coming in, accelerating innovation will result in digital transformation of your organization. The speed at which you can do this. So, and while you're doing it, and we talk about digital transformation a lot, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the fact is there is a changing expectation of the workforce. Now, somebody in the panel had said that yes, workforce has been mixed all the while, right? For generations, there have been age group difference in workforce. So what's different? Well, it could have been so, but the pace at which technology is developing, changing, was not the same at that time. Why we need to talk about workforce now and not previously is because the personas have changed. Let me give an anecdotal example of this. 10 years back, and some of you perhaps were working 10 years back, we remember a time when you used to go to office, because if we had to browse something, we might as well do it from the office, because the office bandwidth was very nice, home bandwidth was not so good, basically. You all remember that time, right? Today, or even 2 years back, if you needed good bandwidth, you would go home, because your office bandwidth is no longer that good, isn't it? Yeah? Okay, not everybody agrees. Maybe you need to talk to your CIOs, or we need to talk to ours. But at the same time, we know that today's bandwidth, broadband that you have at home is probably giving you better bandwidth than what you get in office. The point I'm making is that our personas, individual personas, have rapidly progressed. Our corporate personas have not. Which means today, if I have to learn something new, as a new skill, I want to create ice cream for my daughter's birthday party. It's very simple today. I just have to go to YouTube, learn it in 5 minutes, understand how to make it, and get the ingredients and make that ice cream. Correct? But if I have to learn something in my organization, a new system, I have to learn about creating opportunities in SFDC. You're all familiar with this? Or I have to learn how to change opportunity owner in SFDC. What do I have to do? Is there a YouTube video? Maybe, I have not checked, but I don't think so, because every SFDC implementation is a bit different. Or for that matter, I want to know how to take my backup of my email, or how do I recover the backup from my email. Simple problem, but I don't know how the organization is doing it. I'm probably better call up some IT guy. But you didn't call up an ice cream guy when you were looking for how to make ice cream, right? But in corporates, you have to call up an IT guy to even do the basics, which you probably can check in YouTube and do it, but you don't. Now, this difference between corporate and personal persona is what I'm talking about. And it impacts learning, but more importantly, it impacts agility, which restricts and inhibits digital transformation. That's one of the key important points to remember. Hyper-segmentation. Me and my wife in the night, we always end up watching Netflix. Do you? Okay. I said this yesterday as well. If you can't binge learn in your corporate has a problem. If you can binge consume Netflix, but you can't binge learn, that means there is a problem in your learning system. And I'll tell you what those problems are and how to get there. But essentially, when me and my wife both are looking at our Netflix in our respective iPads, what we discovered is the screen she looks at when our homepage and the screen I look at my homepage. We have a single login ID, by the way, but she can choose that. Her name is there, she chooses her profile, I choose mine. My kids have their own profiles created. My screen is very different from her screen, because my screen is based on my consumption of media, the kind of movies I like, the kind of series I consume. And if I pick another series, it gives me the percentage match. You must have noticed 98% match or whatever, which tells me that this is in line with what I usually view in Netflix. Okay. How do I get to that point of hyper-segmentation when we can create the same learning experience, skill development experience, just like that Netflix consumption? If we can do that, I think we'll get the engagement you need from your employees. Finally, on the business model side, I think the accelerated need for new skills and enterprise, complementary to the business, unrelated, okay, unrelated or complementary skills. What do we mean by that? I was reading an interview by Elon Musk. He's now become very infamous for doing a lot of things wrong, including a lot of drama on TV and a lot of drama on web. But one of the things which I really remember him saying, I used to be a student of history and archaeology. Now you think, what does that got to do with making electrical cars or rockets? And he then brings the elements of history, archaeology, and how he conceived his Tesla, and how he is thinking of going to the moon and beyond and Mars and everything, had Hyperloop, how he conceptualized Hyperloop by studying archaeology. And the journalist asked him, why were you studying archaeology in the first place? He said, I just want to read and I just read everything. Okay. The point I'm making is informal learning, even if it is in a diverse field, ultimately it can have potential impact to the business. And today's business and the role and digital transformation is all about not a submersive business model only, but ideas can float from different areas of the work which have to be incorporated into the business to provide the right customer experience. All right, so having said this, let me, So we have spoken a lot about digital transformation. I'm sure you can get multiple anecdotal examples of digital. The question is, do organizations have the right talent for digital? In fact, before I even present this, do we even understand what is a digital talent? Okay, so I will answer some of these questions. But in a survey, and this is IDC data, it says only 26% believe they have the right digital talent. What does digital talent really means? So we went to organizations, and this is an in public domain, so you can find this report as well, which says that the top challenges that organizations face, the imperatives that they face for digital transformation is number one challenge, 63% agreed, was cultural. And you spoke about culture in the last part of the panel as well. And I'll tell you what culture means. The cultural aspect is very, very key. One of the key things about digital, which I think Anuj said from Reliance, he said this element of fail fast. Okay. What is fail fast? Fail fast is the ability where you take up something new, execute it in a minimum viable product or a solution or a process. It's minimum viable means it's not fully baked. You don't have answers to all the questions, but you start off something. It basically supports that even if you don't have all the things ready that you need to be, let's move on, because speed is critical in digital. Remember, it's all about accelerating innovation. So if you accelerate, you come out with a new product, go and launch it, or a solution or a process or an initiative, even though it is not fully baked, but you fail. And that's okay. It's okay to fail fast. Okay. Do you think, and just show me a hand so that I know, not only are you listening, but also in your organization, how it works, is how many of you think you are empowered to fail fast in your organization? Wow, 1, 2, 3, lot of people. Wow, you work with really good leadership, because I think one of the key elements of digital transformation is this ability to fail fast. If your leadership doesn't embrace it and encourage it, more importantly, empower it to the employees, it will struggle to build the right culture for digital transformation. But not only fail fast, it's also about critical thinking, design thinking, changing the processes, looking at minimum viable processes. Okay, that's a core element which HR can help with. For example, we have this concept of minimum viable trust model. Have you heard of this? You know, these policy documents are there. You have policy documents in your offices? Surely. You have IT policy, for example. When was the last time any of you read it? Compliance? Okay, none of you. So I'll tell you what. When I joined the company, I had almost an IT policy which was 300 pages. I told HR who was giving it to me, have you read it yourself? Okay. And he said, I think I read it. I said, you think you read it? If I ask a question, will you be able to answer? He said, probably not. I said, you must be nuts to give a new employee 300-page document. Who has time to read it, basically? But those are the problems which a digital transformed organization cannot afford to have. You cannot have a 300-page document. You need to have, at best, a 1-page or a 3 paragraphs written, which should suffice the need. You need to work on a minimum viable trust. If I have to work with other party, the minimum level of trust that I need to establish between the two parties to come to an agreement of work is this one, the minimum viable, not the maximum and covering every aspect of risk that process or employee or agreement can have, right? But so this is a shift in your attitude, and that is what I mean by cultural change. These are just some examples of cultural change. I can talk for it about whole day, but I need to move on. The other things around campaign mentality. Many people think that they're online, they have done a digital campaign, they have launched and connected with the customer digitally, so you're digitally transformed. Sorry, as I said before, wrong. Those are all good things. They could be great starting point for your digital transformation. They are great enablers, but that simply is not digital transformation. All right. So, as a result of all this, there is obviously skill gaps created. And again, I'm using a lot of data points because it helps to validate it with industry data. That's one reason. But the more important reason is that these are some aggregation of people like you responding to surveys. So that also helps get that validation in terms of what that is. So new organization skills created by this digital age are organization of the future, the top one, careers and learning, and leadership. Okay. Now, those are the 3 ones that I want to focus on in terms of my session. There are obviously a lot more in terms of employee experience. We'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, there is analytics, digital HR, diversity, augmented workforce, robotics, etc. Now, the core of this is, and let me start with organization of the future. Organization of the future is an organization which is less hierarchical, which supports faster decisions. It has decision support systems which are built into your flow of work. And what do I mean by that? That you have aggregated enough set of data for you to support decision making and for AI to work. One of the things that you must be careful about, we talk about predictive analytics, and I've seen a lot of people talk about it. I have been trying to do predictive analytics. I have been a proponent of that technology for over a decade now. Okay. One of the core principles of developing the right algorithms in predictive for AI to work, to predict basically, is not the algorithm, is the data. Everything that has to take some decision is based on data. You can have the best of the algorithm, but if you don't have the best of the data or the data modeling correctly done, you will never get the right results from AI or robotics, and you will fall back to human interventions. Okay. If you want to not have that failure, it's very important to look at your data sets that you are throwing at the AI system. Without data, it can't do anything, right? So you may have chatbots or anything. If you want to gauge employee sentiments, for example, okay, you have to have tons and tons of data which captures the structured and unstructured experience of that employee, including his emails to everything, right? His exchanges, his social interactions, his personal interaction, official interaction, etc. You must have hundreds of terabytes of data before any of those can materially be impactful in your organization. Just bear that in mind. But organization of the future will have this kind of data available for supporting decision making. What that means is that you will be able to take a lot more agile decisions. There will be a culture of innovation. That innovation will be accelerated. The ideas can turn into products and solutions not within years, but within minutes. Do you know how much time it takes for Facebook to launch a new particular feature or product in their website? 6 minutes. Do you know how much time it takes for normal software to introduce a particular product? We used to do it 2-3 years back, almost like once in 2 years, or maybe once in a year. Today, in our product, which is Percipio, we are doing in bringing a change or an innovation or an enhancement every 2 weeks. So that's example of agile and speed. Careers and learning are going to shift in the digital world. We spoke about this in the panel, they discussed about it. Now, what can you do about it? First of all, you have to understand that the way you have conceived roles in the past are no longer valid anymore. So your JD has to change, first of all, before you can change the IDP. Okay? The reason you have to start with the JD is because the job description is getting different now. So I'll give an example of this later in the day, probably a couple of slides, but just take this in mind that the role and the job has significantly changed and is evolving. Okay? And these definitions will not be absolutely compartmentalized for a particular role. You need to have level of flexibility and in the learning process as well. So there will be this formal process of learning which will be aligned to career growth, IDP, etc., etc. But more importantly, there was this informal learning which needs to happen in a digital transform. That curiosity needs to be served, and it has to be served in the learning. And finally, leadership. Well, clearly some of you have great leaders, and I know those leaders who are not even digitally transformed are great in the way they think, the way they execute, etc. But as somebody who has just, I have been somebody who has been into leadership position now for over 10 years between HP and Micro Focus and now Skillsoft and SumTotal. My experience is that leadership is also a journey. And you have to have this continuous learning. Today I have to learn about how situational leaderships and organizational leadership. There's a whole lot of training that I have done over the years, having been part of IBM, HP, and now these organizations. But more importantly, it's a day-to-day learning that really matters. How you encourage your employees to learn new things. Can you be the coach and a mentor? Okay. Can you show a vision which they can get aligned to? But in digital context, you need to again embrace this riskability, agility, and encourage your employees to take those kind of risks and innovations. Finally, the digital learning also needs to look at how our modern age brain works. Have you thought about this for a moment? All of you have children at home. How much do you think is their attention when you are speaking to them? How many minutes will it last? Okay, you have extremely naughty kid, Raj. But it's not about being naughty. The fact is, we live in a world where attention spans are getting reduced and reduced every day. Okay, you would all agree with that. So we need to start thinking about, when we are building our learning system, is it designed for the modern workforce attention span? Or are you building a curriculum which is based on 300 slides and etc., etc.? You have to drive engagement, and I'll talk about this a little more. So first thing that we did was we needed to understand how the brain works, how the brain learns. And that is the value of us being one of the largest global player in Skillsoft. We can afford to do research in this kind of stuff. So we partnered with MIT and Accenture and started looking this. Now let me give you two snippets out of it. There's a YouTube video on this as well. The two snippets on this that I will share with you without having to go through the report is that we found out that storytelling, do you know about storytelling? We found out that scenario-based learning, storytelling, are a great way of driving and simulating the brain. The retention of a storytelling is far more than any of the slides, basically. So if I were to tell you stories, and I did few stories about you saw in my speech I was trying to use some stories which were personal stories, etc. Because those you will remember even when you walk out of the room. You will not remember any of the slide or text that I'm showing. The second thing is that it has been proven now with the brain research that in one side of the slide, when you're doing your presentation, if you keep some text, at the minimum 3 sentences, not more than that, and if you have pictures on this side, left and right, then it simulates both sides of the brain. Because pictures, the brain reads from a different part of the brain. But when both sides of the brain actually work, your retention and learning is enhanced. So these are just some snapshot of what there's obviously a whole lot different. There are a lot of discovery that we are doing around brain researched content development. So many of the content that we are producing today is brain researched, particularly on the leadership side, etc. So I talked a lot about the learner. One thing you have to keep in mind, and I think we have talked about this, so now a time for talking about solutions that you can take away. Learner centricity. Learner centricity is about building all your learning system and keeping the learner at the center of it. Right? And if you can do that, you will be able to get him to binge learning. But more importantly, let me talk about few important elements of that. We all like to learn differently. If I have to learn today a programming language, for example, I may start with this YouTube video. I may go into a forum where they have snippets of codes written so that I can quickly analyze it. I may do some cut and paste and use some templates which are already there. And then when I have to do deep development, I would like to read a book, right? Because I know that whatever is captured in a book will never get captured in the session, etc., etc. But that's me. Somebody else could be different. We all have different. One thing is to ensure that your learning is multimodal, which means allows people to learn and adopt to their learning styles versus forcing a particular method of learning to them. That's important. The top things I want to talk about Let me paint again a story for you. The travel time in Bangalore, I live in Gurgaon, so it's pretty bad, but it is not as bad as I faced in Bangalore, or for that matter, even in Mumbai sometimes. Average commute time is more than an hour. Now, when you are in that journey of taxi or Uber or you're driving, whatever, one of the things which is not very popular in India but was very popular in Singapore, Australia, places where I have worked and lived, is audiobooks. I don't know why it is not popular here. I have no reason to understand why it is not, given the high commute time we all have. But for example, if I want to learn something about AI or IoT, or tomorrow I have a session or an internal meeting on waste management using IoT. I'm just making it up. Okay, I don't have a clue how IoT works in waste management, but I have a meeting with a customer. I need to talk intelligently. So what I can do is I can go to my learning environment, hold my mobile, launch the app, and say, tell me about waste management in IoT. What can I learn today? And it will throw up some contents, and then I'll say, I need an audiobook on this. So, or I could be doing an internal training and I need to learn what is the playing to win format in which you can build a successful vision statements. That playing to win was an audiobook, and while driving, it takes about 20 to 25 minutes. It plays on my car stereo because I have Bluetooth connectivity. I'm driving, I learned something, and by the time I got home, I was fully equipped with all the essential knowledge I needed to have for a half an hour discussion on playing to win formats. That's incredible, isn't it? It's just in time. It's done at a pace which is very comfortable for me. I'm doing it my way, basically. That's just one example. In this, we use two techniques. One is that it has to be in mobile, obviously. So it is. The second is voice discovery. How many do you think that voice discovery is an important feature in a modern learning system? Very, very important, particularly if you are on the mobile, right? And today, the modern learning environments, at least from our company, supports these kind of things. The second thing is mentoring, and I think some lady out here asked about mentoring. I cannot undermine the amount of transformation that mentoring can have on your career goals and your career aspirations, and get the right guidance at the right time can be a critical success factor for an employee. Okay, so coaching and mentoring built into your learning systems. More importantly, based on short videos which you can consume, because if you remember the attention, I can't consume 1 hour videos, but hey, can I consume 5-minute video before I go to sleep? Absolutely. So build your learning content which is based on these kind of principles. Digital changes everything. This is something I talked before. The point that I am trying to make is, previously there was a job called DevOps or any principle you take of digital. I am maybe a developer in your organization. I develop web content for you, or maybe I write codes for you. Now, as an employee, all my job and qualification needed was that whether I learned programming, whether I can code, and can I produce good codes which can get executed. That was my core competency. Well, no longer. In the digital world, I first need to think whether it will be on-prem or in the cloud. I have to think how will it get secured. I have to think about how will it get deployed, etc., etc. The point that I'm making is, in digital world, the roles have evolved and changed. In today's world, this role is completely different from what it used to be previously. And if this guy has not mastered all the skills, he cannot be efficient in his job in a digitally transformed world, which means continuous learning, which means this knowledge should be available to him. So how do you build journeys? Do you do that through IDP? Yes, we can, but we just heard in the panel IDPs are not effective. Why do you think it's not effective? I think somebody even asked why. Why? Because more often than not, it does not guarantee that I will get a career goal if I follow that IDP. That's my experience of it. I could be wrong. But I never believed that if I selected 2 courses and I really did it, then I'm going to get the next level job. Nobody assured me that. I have a way to solve that problem. What we have done with organizations is created journeys. Let's say this is a career, and this is just an example, please. Don't take it as a real one. This is just to highlight how we have done it. We said your job is today this. You're a traditional tester. This is what you have done in monolithic architectures, in legacy systems. You want to be an automated tester, right? Because a whole lot of automation can eat away your job. This is also a higher level, paying level job. If you want to go there, these are the skills required, these are the tasks, and this is the roadmap. If you get your skills aligned to this and you pass the exam, I guarantee that you qualify for this job and will be given a preference for this job. Fair enough, right? We are fair to the employee, we are telling him that this is what the organization needs, and if you do that, I will give you a preference to you, the organizational benefits and the employee benefits. Now the question is, this could mean I have to read a 300-page book. Will I do it? We don't even spend 20 minutes in a week learning. How can I read 300-page books? Okay. Now, we solved that as well. So what we did was, when we curated this path, we realized that he doesn't necessarily need to learn all the 300 pages of the book. But in order to build this proficiency level, all he needs is to read this 10 things in 10 different pages in this 300-page book. If he does that and understand that pieces, he is covered for this job role. So we have gone and used all of this. Then we build artificial intelligence on top of this, saying that, okay, if he's studying all of this, what should be his next recommended level? Just like Netflix. It shows you that if you have consumed this content, maybe you will be interested in this content. That's built in the platform as well. But this curation is not something, it can be done by AI as well. Can it be? My answer is no. Because this is a career architecture, a career journey. This has to be built by experience. And that experience comes from having done this job for some years at least, to know what the real life project requirements are. So yes, I can suggest and recommend content based on AI if I have enough data points that is of your consumption in that platform. But I cannot build career journeys for you. So for the formal learning, I have to curate it based on my SMEs who are my subject matter expertise, and they will curate this path. And we have built subject matter expertise across industries to build these career paths and journeys for our customers. Just an example. And these career goals then support the performance management system and build in those content into the platform. Now, if that means having YouTube content, so be it. If that content comes from another third-party source, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where content comes from. Now, I may say that, okay, I am a content company, please take my content. And my content I am selling because I am saying my content is at least brain researched compared to MOOCs, where anybody with a handheld camera can create content. Creating content is not the problem. Actually, too much of it is the problem. There's just too much of content. Think about when you want to learn something in YouTube. You go and search for it, and the result throws up with 25 videos. You don't know which one to click and get the answer. More importantly, you don't even know whether they are the right videos or not. In fact, if you're sitting with your family, you will be afraid to click on some of the videos. You don't know what you're going to get eventually. So learning paths creation takes care of all this problem, because I am curating, finding all the content, ensuring that you don't have to do this discovery yourself. I am creating those paths for you and making the employee attain a particular level of proficiency level which the organization demands from him. But at the same time, giving him the informal learning of YouTube and everything accessible to him so that he can do informal learning as well. He can learn whatever he wants. But at least as management, I know what kind of proficiency exists in the organization today. See, the other problem is if you allow too much of shadow learning to happen, which is beyond your control. I call it shadow learning because you don't control it, manage it, monitor it, or report it. The fact is that there is a lot of learning there in the organization which as HR professionals or management are not aware of. So the system takes care of that as well. Lastly, gamification. We all talk about it. it's there, but more importantly, as I said, the ability to build third-party integrations into this environment is the key to its success. I spoke about leadership. Unless your leadership embraces learning themselves in things like critical thinking, things like design thinking, risk-taking ability, leading through change, a whole lot of modern age thinking around digital transformation and how to lead an organization in this through build agile skills, agility, etc. Those are the important skill set a leader needs to have. Okay, I talked a lot about formal learning, career journeys. Let me give you some insights about informal learning. Somebody asked, how do you build curiosity? And the answer given was, and he's a friend of mine, Raman, was that human beings are naturally curious, so they are always curious. Well, everybody is curious, that's the right thing to say, but does your platform embraces that curiosity and helps him to learn? So let me give an example. We all get mails of things where we have some words we don't know what it is about. I talked about this word called blitzscale. Please Google it if you can now or later, whenever you get time today. New book by Bill Gates, I loved it. At least I loved the synopsis of it. The point is, if you try to Google it and want to learn about it, if you read something about it, at the time when you need it, at the time when you had to learn about it, that is the time the learning is most effective, right? So the platform supports it. So if you are browsing an article like this, click on a hyperlink, a window opens of learning management system, which says these are the videos available on this topic, and this is how you can play it, and in 2 minutes, learn about that particular topic. This is called learning in the flow of work, the most effective way of learning, which is not pushed to him, but this is pull-based learning, discovery-based learning, curiosity-based learning. The most important thing, whatever he is learning is getting captured in the system as well. And then I am recommending him content based on his search and his learning, so that he gets more content into it and dives more into it. Finally, we spoke about future-proofing your organization. I spoke about multiple themes. If I had 3 hours, I would have been able to elaborate on many more things, but I don't have that much time. So what I want to leave you with, and you can either take a photograph or I will be happy to send you the slides, is a framework. I promised you a framework, and I said that it's very difficult with so many vendors, so many people coming in. I thought it was our responsibility as the leader in the industry to build that thought leadership and build a framework which is acceptable. So we deal with more than 250 organizations in India, but globally we have more than 6,500 organizations. From these companies, we have been learning. We have been learning ourselves, and we have built what we call as a maturity framework for digital economy. It's trademarked by Skillsoft. We have been building this for 8 years now. Now what it tells you is this is a journey that an organization takes in their ability to go from early adopters of digital transformation to manage, transforming, continuous and accelerating innovation. Now these are based around some core competencies and capabilities. So your next question is, how do we measure all this? That what stage we are in? We use 7 indicators, essential indicators. These 7 essential indicators are culture of innovation, HR's role, governance, technology and platform and tools and processes, learning and talent ownership and employee engagement and participation, and finally measurement. These are the lead 7 indicators of measuring a digitally transformed organization. Finally, we put this maturity model and these lead capabilities and build a framework. This is too small to read, I understand that. And as I said, those of you who are interested, please send me, I will send you this mail. These are the capability metrics. So in this side you have the 7 indicators. On this side you have 5 stages of digital transformation, and then each one of them explains what is the organizational capability required for you to transform into a continuous learning or a digitally transformed organization. I understand it's a bit complex. This was probably more complex than the answer that you were expecting. Now, for that reason, what we have done is we have started working with at least a select set of our customers where we do what we call as a career transformation journey, a digital transformation journey blueprint. So what we do is we do a half-day workshop with key practitioners and subject matter expertise within your organization and do a discovery workshop. That discovery workshop is made up of basically, essentially 30 questions or less in each of the 7 domains. If you don't have time for that, I can even email you those 30 questions. Once you answer the 30 questions, they have to be categorized on business relevant, challenging, pain, etc. And once you complete that, you will be able to model your journey and the roadmap yourself. And then you can build the roadmap from there. Now this, I know this sounds so much more complex than you thought, but the fact is, please understand, we are trying to work across 30 different ecosystem of and subdomains of different systems. There's so many partners, vendors, etc. We're trying to put it all in together for you. So it is a bit complex, unfortunately, but we will be happy to work with you. So with that said, I think I'm confident that with this journey, you will be able to master the digital economy, and I wish you all the best.
Question regarding the technical architecture of the platform.
Yeah.
In many cases, in larger companies which have a very regulated environment,
Yes.
IT regulated, including because of privacy reasons and so on, there is a certain hesitation of working with independent platforms outside of their own learning management systems, because of basically privacy reasons.
Absolutely.
How does the Percipio platform address something
security.
like this? Security
of
user data.
Great question. I think one of the promises I can make you is that Percipio is a safe place to learn. There are a lot of companies I have dealt with, and I continue to do so. So I came from a very competitive IT industry, and we have a very high attrition rate. Our attrition rate is in plus 20%. So I was very careful that any learning system we provide should not be leaking our data or monetizing our data of learning. And this is the risk that happens typically with MOOCs, etc. So what we ensure our customers is your learning knowledge, the skill that you build, the employee information, etc., will remain completely. So we are GDPR compliant, first of all. So I know GDPR is coming in from EMEA, and many of your businesses need to be GDPR compliant. The second is we have some security standards that I can share with you offline. We cater to the highest level of security standards, much more than typically organizational data centers have on their own. And the third is the data confidentiality. See, we are a commercial company and a leader at that. We don't do any data breaches. If you look at many of the companies which are going through this data breach, and I know it's happening with Google, Facebook, etc., the fact is we have assured our customers with proof points of how we are a safe place to learn. As I said, I myself as a business leader, the last thing I want is to provide a learning system where it is being used for recruitment. So that is the most horrible outcome for the business, absolutely. So I can share more details. I had actually some content behind it as well to prove how we build that up, and we can get it across to you. But great question, thanks for that. Any other question? Yeah, yes, please.
Hi, this is the same on the digital platform.
Yeah.
I was a little curious to know, so you have the digital platform with various content available where employees can go and pick up and learn.
Yeah.
Now, is there an evaluation
Assessments is built in.
Is there? Is it proctored?
Yes, it is proctored.
Yeah, certified?
So
Certification.
let me tell you what. We were doing assessments on our content, which means content completion certificate is available. There are questions after every module that you have to answer, and you can do that. But the problem was that people wanted a far more matured assessment with proctoring and stuff like that. So we started working with Metal, who are one of the assessment companies, and we had tied up with them so that the Metal assessment is built into Percipio environment, which means the user can learn content, click on his assessment piece, he will get the assessment that he has been recommended, go to the Metal platform to do his assessment, come back to Percipio and get his assessment completion report, test scores, etc., everything in the Percipio. So he remains in the Percipio with the same user ID password, and he does his assessment, but the assessment questions and the question bank that is being aligned between Metal and our content. So we are proctoring, using proctoring to check, etc., but also aligning our question bank to the content which he studied. Because one of the key gaps is people always complain after giving an assessment is that the question that I was asked, I was not teach the answer of that. So we are ensuring that those kind of things don't happen. Yes, so course completion is based on a time period by which you do it and etc., and the number of questions you get it correct. Assessment is a completely different thing. Assessment measures the proficiency level of that particular thing. We in our content have also graded that depending on your proficiency level, what should be the content you should be consuming. And we can tie assessment to each level. Somebody may believe he is an expert, but he is not really. So he can do the mid-level test and figure out whether he is master or an expert, depending on his proficiency level. Great, thank you so much for your attention and the questions. Thanks.